Hey everyone, I have my Sprinter van here, a couple issues that I'm dealing with. One is when I came in to replace my fuel pump here, pulled a lot of stuff out of the way. I did not pull this piece out of the way, and in the process of replacing the fuel pump, it broke. It is the return fuel line for the injectors. It's like everything on a Sprinter, tiny little plastic part that costs $100 or $200. So we'll see if we can add links to where we can find them online, but I went ahead and found one. So today I'm going to replace it. The other thing I'm going to do, while I was talking to a Sprinter mechanic, I learned that this warm air return here feeds a little bit of diesel fluid into the turbo, and they've had a lot of turbo trouble, turbo burn down, or burn out, or gum up. Anyway, then you have to replace your turbo, you have to replace some lines, and you have to replace the air cooling system below the radiator. An expensive prospect. So what we do is we disconnect this warm air return line and drop a hose down to the ground over here and plug off the warm air return into the turbo, and then your system runs clean and your turbo lasts a lot longer. I have pulled the turbo intake off and unplugged the warm air return. I am trying to figure out how to get it out of the turbo intake hose. Alright, I unplugged the sensor. It definitely put up a fight. I was trying to be careful not to break anything. It looks like I succeeded. It's hose ribbed into that hole. I used 2 screwdrivers to kind of stretch that rubbery material a little bit, and finally got it off. I ended up not breaking the plug, and the sensor, the ribbed ends of the hose are still good, so it looks like I'm good to go. You can also see here that diesel builds up in there quite a bit. My hands got black just unplugging this thing. And that feeds into your turbo and into your air cooling system and gums everything up. Okay, this is the injector fuel return line. Kind of pricey. It's easy to break. This little T right here is right above your fuel pump when you're trying to pull those fuel pump lines off. Tiny little pieces of plastic there, really easy to break. And there's the part number. Okay, here are the parts you need to do the warm air bypass for your turbo intake. I have 3 feet of 3/4 inch heater hose. I have a hose clamp for that hose and a rubber boat plug. Here's my warm air bypass. Parts installed. The boat plug is in the turbo intake. The 3 foot 3/4 inch hose is hose clamped onto the warm air return. I just need to remember to plug this back in when I put everything back together. The mechanic I talked to said that they've had turbos go out in as little as 30,000 miles due to diesel feed into the turbo. And most of them, he said, go out prior to 100,000 miles. But since they started doing this, they have not had turbo gumming trouble. And when it does go out, you have to replace the turbo, some of these lines, and the warm air cooler underneath here. We're going to get started replacing the injector fuel return line because I broke that piece there. First, I'm going to loosen up the oil fill cap and pull it off. I'm going to remove this cover. Over here, I have to pull off the turbo warm air line, and then I can pull off this cover, and then I can replace the fuel return line on the injectors. This cover pops off in two spots on this side, and then it just slides up. In the back here, there's a wire clipped on there. It needs to be unclipped. Looks like it'll pull right off of here. Then we'll remove this rubber insulative piece. The rubber insulative piece just lifted right off. I was just being careful not to get dirt into my oil fill hole. Now we have exposed the injector return line on this side. That was the easy one. Now for the harder one. I am removing the turbo line from the driver's side so that I can access the injector return line up here. There was one bolt there, one bolt there, two bolts there, and another one back behind it here. Keep track of all your seals. Keep them clean and safe. If you get any air in the system when you reassemble, then you'll get codes and have to hunt it down. As recommended by my mechanic friend, I have cleaned up all the areas that connect up to the air lines. I've cleaned up the seals and rubbed a little motor oil on them. Same thing with this, cleaned up the seals, lubed them up a little bit so that when I put them back together they slide easily and seal up easily. I got the cover off. Here it is here. It put up a pretty good fight. It pops up here and there. I had to flex it a little to get it past the turbo line, and then I ran it through the back and up the top. The other way that's recommended to do this is to go ahead and pull the two bolts on the turbo line down there and move it a little, and then I think it'll probably come out this way. But the mechanics are telling me that this is all aesthetic and they prefer to not have them on the engine, so I'm debating even putting them back. I got the rubber piece out of there. Same thing, I lifted up, worked it towards the cab and pulled it around the wire harness here. Now my injector return line is exposed. I should be able to change it out pretty quick. The advice I was given is each injector has a little twist piece. And you grab a hold of it, untwist it like that, and then it pops off. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that line now. This centerpiece I learned earlier just has this pin. Used a screwdriver, pulled it out. Don't lose that pin. It's a tough piece to find. And then that just pulls out. The line runs under the fuel rail. The right way to do it will be to disconnect all the fuel lines and lift that rail, connect the line back in. If you're not putting the covers back on, you could probably just run the line over top. I'll decide. But I cut the old hose out from under the rail, and I'm just going to run the new hose over top of it. I'm replacing the gaskets or the rubber seals on each of the injectors. So there's 6 of them here. Just a little tech tip here. You see the white, I turn it so that there's no white. When you put it on, you'll feel it kind of, I don't know, drop on per se. Then you have to feel it click. Like that. And then you can lock it. And that's ready. The new injector fuel line is installed. Clicked onto each injector. Used a little engine oil on every seal and gasket so that they sealed up tight and clicked on easily and can be removed later easily. Putting the turbo back together, I put this piece on and I put this piece on with its clips set in place. And then I'm just going to tip them down together so that those bolts and the one on the back line up with their bolt holes. Okay, going to reinstall this sensor cluster here back where it belongs, and it's got a piece underneath that holds a hose. The turbo intake is reinstalled, the warm air bypass. The sensor is plugged in. And then the heater hose is just fed down somewhere that's not going to cause any trouble. You could get a puff of smoke when you start the engine, but now I will not be feeding diesel or half burned up diesel into the turbo to gum it up. The air filter is back in place with the intake to the turbo put back on, the two sensors plugged back in. When you're starting the engine back up after replacing components on the fuel system, don't push the brake. Push the start button twice so that you can get the lights on the dash and let the fuel pump cycle through. Once it stops, turn it off, press twice again, get it to push the fuel through, and maybe do it a third time. This time we'll start. Checking for any leaks.